Right now, you're sitting on your couch, holding a glass of wine, or cracking open a cold beer after a long week, and you aren't thinking twice about it. You take a sip, you feel that warm, light buzz settle in, and you relax. It feels like a totally modern way to unwind. Except it isn't. That liquid sitting in your glass is actually one of the oldest, most powerful forces in human history. It's older than writing. It's older than organized religion. In fact, some scientists believe it's older than farming itself. The question is, when did our ancestors figure out that rotten fruit could make them feel good? And how did a complete chemical accident end up shaping human civilization? To answer that, we have to go back way further than you think, long before humans were humans. In fact, we have to go back 10 million years deep into the rainforests of Africa. Picture our tiny primate ancestors swinging through the canopy. Back then, survival meant one thing: finding calories. Sugar was gold, and the sweetest, most calorie-dense food available was ripe fruit. But ripe fruit has a clock ticking on it. Eventually, it falls to the forest floor, bruised and rotting. Microscopic yeast cells landing on that fruit start eating the natural sugars and turning them into ethanol, alcohol. Now, for most animals, ethanol is toxic. It makes you sick. But geneticist Matthew Carrigan discovered that around 10 million years ago, a single mutation occurred in the liver enzyme of our shared ancestor with chimpanzees. That single genetic tweak boosted our ability to digest alcohol by a factor of 40. Suddenly, our ancestors could eat the fallen fermenting fruit that every other animal had to avoid. It gave them a massive survival advantage. Extra calories meant survival. They weren't drinking to get drunk, they were eating to stay alive. Think about that. Our love affair with alcohol started as an evolutionary cheat code for free energy. Fast forward millions of years. Humans evolved, we walked upright, and we developed big, hungry brains. But for a long time, alcohol remained a rare, happy accident. You'd stumble across a hollow tree trunk filled with fermented berries, have a great afternoon, and then it was gone. Until about 13,000 years ago. In 2018, a team of archaeologists digging in Raqefet cave in modern-day Israel made a wild discovery. They found stone mortars carved directly into the bedrock. When they analyzed the microscopic plant residue left inside, they found something undeniable: cooked starch grains that had been sprouted and mashed. That isn't bread. That's beer brewed in a cave before agriculture even existed. The Natufian hunter-gatherers who used that cave weren't farmers. They were still roaming the landscape. Yet, they were taking wild barley and wheat, grinding it down, soaking it in water, and letting wild yeast do its magic. Why would nomadic humans waste precious time and energy making beer when staying alive was already a full-time job? Because of what happens when humans gather. The Natufians weren't brewing beer to drink alone in the dark. They were using it for massive, ritualistic feasts. Beer was the ultimate social glue. It lowered social anxiety, bound tribes together, and made strangers trust each other. And here's what makes this so important. For decades, historians taught a very simple story about human history. Humans invented farming, settled down, built surplus grain, and then thought, hey, let's turn some of this leftover wheat into booze. First came the bread, then came the beer. But site after site, like the massive 11,000-year-old stone temple at Bekli Tepe in Turkey, is completely flipping that timeline on its head. At Bekli Tepe, researchers found giant stone tubs containing chemical traces of fermenting grain, but zero signs of permanent housing. People weren't living there full-time. They were gathering from hundreds of miles away to build a temple and throw enormous parties. This led archaeologists like Joseph Eder to propose a radical new idea, often called the beer before bread hypothesis. What if we didn't settle down to farm grain for food? What if the intense desire to brew alcohol for social feasting was the primary driver that forced us to stay in one place and invent agriculture? Think about that. The foundation of modern civilization, cities, farms, specialized labor, might have been built just so we could guarantee a steady supply of alcohol. By 5,000 years ago, alcohol wasn't just a party trick anymore. It was an economic engine. In ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, water was often contaminated and dangerous to drink. Beer, on the other hand, was boiled during the brewing process and contained natural antibacterial properties. It was safer than water, packed with nutrients, and served as daily liquid bread. In fact, it was the literal currency of the ancient world. The builders of the Great Pyramids of Giza weren't paid in gold, they were paid in beer rations, about 4 to 5 liters a day per worker. Even the world's oldest written literary work, the Epic of Gilgamesh, uses alcohol as the defining marker of what makes someone civilized. When the wild man Enkidu is brought into society, he doesn't know how to act until he drinks 7 pitchades of beer. The text literally says, "His soul became limber, his face shone, and he became human." To the ancient world, drinking wasn't a vice. It was the line between being a wild animal and being a civilized person. From there, alcohol escalated rapidly. The Greeks and Romans scaled up winemaking, turning it into a global trade network. The Middle Ages brought the invention of distillation, concentrating alcohol into spirits so strong they were used as medicine, disinfectant, and eventually, high-proof commercial goods. It transformed from a forest floor calorie hack into the very fuel that powered trade routes, built empires, and funded governments. So here's the full picture. 10 million years ago, a random liver mutation allowed our primate ancestors to eat rotten fruit. 13,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers figured out how to brew wild grain in stone caves. 11,000 years ago, the desire for bigger feasts pushed us to invent farming. 5,000 years ago, beer literally paid for the pyramids. And today, when you crack open that cold drink at the end of a long day, you aren't just enjoying a beverage. You are participating in a 10-million-year-old evolutionary tradition. You are using the exact same social mechanism that tricked a group of nomadic hunter-gatherers into sitting around a campfire, dropping their guard, and deciding to build civilization together. We didn't just invent alcohol. Alcohol helped invent us. If you found this trip through human history interesting, leave a like, drop a comment with your favorite ancient fact, and subscribe for more deep dives into why we are the way we are.